Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz.
On the show tonight,
it's 98% political, 2% substance.
wants to try a new method for curbing gang crime, but critics say it'd do more harm than good.
A police union contract years in the making heads to City Council tomorrow. We talk with alder people about that and other pressing city business.
We're playing for real here. This isn't a game.
The Biden administration is facing pushback over the federal vaccine mandate for employers with 100 workers or more. We hear from differing points of view.
We have to imagine the world we want to create.
County officials kick off Racial Equity Week. We hear more about its goals.
BMO Harris is shuttering 9 locations by the end of the year. That and more from Cranes.
What exactly is the creator economy? We take a look at how industries are emerging from regular people garnering large audiences online.
And see how one local organization is on a mission to conserve thousands of monarch butterflies. But first, some of today's top stories. After months of hand-wringing, a state energy bill is finally on its way from the General Assembly to the governor's desk.
We're putting Illinois at the forefront of a green energy economy, a whole new wave of jobs, without immediately sacrificing a whole bunch of incumbent jobs. That's what we spent the summer doing, was trying to find that balance, to try to make sure people didn't wake up tomorrow without a job, but that every kid in the state knows that they have a brighter environmental future and a prospect of going to work in the clean energy economy.
Governor J.B. Pritzker has said he'll sign the bill, which passed the Senate with a 37-17 vote. It's a win for the governor, who's made eliminating carbon emissions from the state's power industry a top priority. A commission of Chicagoans working on redrawing the city's 50 ward maps has released its first draft today.
This draft includes 12 Latino citizen voting age population majority wards and 16 voting age Black majority wards, and keeps the Chinatown community whole without creating districts that look like lobsters or spaghetti.
Might sound delicious, but it's not so good for your ward maps, says Mike Strode of the Independent Chicago Advisory Redistricting Commission. That draft actually includes 13 majority Latino wards, 16 Black majority wards, and has a ward that would keep the Chinatown community whole versus split between other wards. The commission is asking Chicagoans for feedback over the next 2 weeks and is working toward getting at least 10 alder people to support the so-called People's Map, which would trigger an election. And parents in need of child care and the people who provide it are getting some extra support from the state government today. Human Services Secretary Grace Ho touted the work the state's been doing to help both of those groups during the pandemic.
Over 5,000 child care providers have received restoration grants going back to July of 2020, a sustaining and highly successful program, as the governor noted, and I want to emphasize that our efforts are working. 98% of licensed child care centers that received these grants are still open and caring for children today.
This new aid comes in the form of the Child Care Assistance Program, or CCAP, which goes to unemployed parents for 3 months while they look for and begin work. Additionally, a new child care workforce bonus program provides $1,000 bonuses to eligible child care staff. Up next, details on Mayor Lori Lightfoot's new method for curbing gang crime. Stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Chicago is coming off of another violent weekend. Mayor Lori Lightfoot wants to employ a new tactic, suing gang members in civil court. But that is proving controversial. Amanda Vinicky joins us now with more. Amanda, how is this going to work?
Well, Brandis, first a little bit of context here. According to Chicago police statistics, the city saw 77 shootings within the last week. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot said it is making people afraid, fearful, and especially, she says, of gangs which are terrorizing neighborhoods. Now, her proposal to go after gang leaders in civil court and sue to seize their ill-begotten assets. Now, bring them out of the shadows, she says. Take away that profit motive.
Killing babies, killing children, killing old people indiscriminately, that is absolutely not acceptable. And we've got to put a marker down that as a city, we are using every tool in our toolkit to push back against these violent gangs that are leaving a trail of blood and death and misery in their wake.
Her proposal is modeled after the Illinois Street Gang Terrorism Omnibus Prevention Act, a state law which has been used for decades in the collar counties to go after gangs.
I'm sure Chicago looked at this when the law was first passed and said, does it make sense? And arrived at a logical conclusion. It'd be a huge boondoggle, waste of money, and a pure political show.
Attorney John Malk represented 3 former Latin King gang members who he said turned their lives around when a case out of Kane County went after them using that state gang law. He says it took 7 years to dismiss the charges. In that time, his clients had trouble getting jobs, paying mortgages. Malk says it is hard to win a case like this. He reviewed a docket of 100 or so attempts, and he says few, if any, succeeded.
It looked to me like the majority of them were just what we call in the law default. Somebody was sued, they never appeared in court, or they tore up the summons, and they could care less, and they got a court order, and then the state said, look, we got a court order, but it didn't solve the problem, didn't stop crime, didn't collect assets.
Now, the ACLU has also come out against the plan, saying that Chicago needs to focus on investing in communities, also noting that a tool already exists for law enforcement, saying the law already provides broad authority to police to seize property from those suspected of criminal activity. We believe those processes already have been allowed to operate without due process. And that is also a concern for Freddie Martinez with the Lucy Parsons lab. Because this is a civil and not a criminal matter, alleged gang members would not get a public defender in these cases. Also, because it's a civil matter, there's a lower burden of proof, the preponderance of evidence versus guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's a very low threshold, and you have something like career prosecutors who their entire job is to seize stuff. Going up against, mostly like poor, brown people with, often no legal representation, who don't know the system at all, and have a very challenging time even raising the kinds of arguments that what a judge would accept.
Martinez poured over years of data on police use of civil asset forfeiture and says that it creates a perverse incentive for law enforcement. Police can seize people's cars, video game machines, cash, and then use the money to buy more surveillance equipment. He also questions whether this strategy is effective.
You can sort of imagine that if it were like a house, for example, that maybe that was being used like as a gang hideout. Maybe you could raise that kind of argument. But what we were seeing is that they were seizing something like $1,000 was the average seizure, right? So we're not talking about like they're taking down like Pablo Escobar. We're talking about just everyday people who had their like rent money, seized.
Now, attorney John Malk again says that he imagines Lightfoot, in the wake of so much crime, is casting a net and looking for any potential solution. And if this method is to be used, he says, it should be the Cook County State's attorney and not Chicago's corporate council in charge of enforcing it. Now, asked whether this was an attempt to go around Kim Foxx, the mayor on Friday said no. She says it is her responsibility not to wait to, again, use any tool at her disposal to help to make Chicago safe. In a statement, Kim Foxx's office this afternoon says it does not have details on the mayor's plan, but we are open to collaborating with law enforcement and city leaders as we look to increase safety in our communities. Now, the ordinance was introduced later this afternoon, and it does specify that a minimum of half of any asset seized be spent to support victims and witnesses of street gang activity. Brandis, back to you.
Amanda, thank you. And now to Paris and more of what's headed to City Council. Paris.
Brandis, a proposed police union contract for rank-and-file members heads to City Council tomorrow, more than 4 years after the last contract expired. Alder people are also set to consider plans to allow marijuana to be sold legally downtown. And all this comes as some call for Alderman Jim Gardner's resignation amid allegations that he threatened constituents. And joining us to discuss that and other city business ahead of tomorrow's meeting are Alderperson Scott Waguespack, who represents parts of the North Side, Alderman Gilbert Villegas, who represents parts of the Northwest Side, Alderman Anthony Beal, who represents parts of the far South Side, and Alderman Brendan Riley, who represents most of the Loop. Welcome all of you back to Chicago tonight. To Alderman Waguespack, I'll start with you. That police union contract, it cleared committee. The full City Council will vote to ratify or not ratify it tomorrow. Does it go far enough in addressing some of the reform efforts that the mayor promised?
Well, I think it goes pretty far. We've done away with anonymous complaints here, but we've also added, I think there's going to be funding and aspects for mental health for police officers. So we're going to try and improve the work that we do on the back end for their health. So I think it's a pretty good compromise. A lot of people would like to see more, but I think that most aldermen might agree that this is, we've been waiting 5 years to get a contract. The interim agreement still has some things to work on, but I think it could move forward. And
it also awards 4 years of retroactive and proactive pay raises for police officers. This comes as a homicide rate is still high, Alderman Riley. Late last week, Superintendent Brown announced he was going to redeploy this citywide roving gang or community safety unit and put those cops into other units. Is that an acknowledgement that controversial plan has not worked?
Well, I'm glad the superintendent's making that change. It's something I've been advocating for and a number of my colleagues have. Unfortunately, the last 2 years, we've had incredible attrition rates at the department. Close to 1,100 officers have retired, and we're certainly not coming close to backfilling them in a timely fashion. So then to have hundreds more cops pulled out of the local beats and local districts onto much larger teams, not being directly supervised by local command staff, I didn't think that was the best use of resources right now. So I am grateful to the superintendent for making an adjustment to that program. Tactical units are very valuable. They're very important tools, but it can't be at the expense of the local police district and beat. Beat officers know their neighborhoods and the context of those neighborhoods best, and the local command staff are best at directing the tactical units that are used. So it's my hope that these changes will continue and that we'll get more of our officers back into the beats they know best, because that's where they can connect with the community. That's where they can gather intel, and they understand what to look out for when they're out there in the area they know best and work day to day.
And I know a lot of older people complained that this citywide unit took police officers from beats, so some will be happy to get those officers back if indeed that's where they go. Alderman Beal, this also comes as Mayor Lightfoot announced a plan to go after gang members' assets. Is this something that constitutionally would work or would work to help community safety?
Well, Paris, let me first say that I think it was an utter failure when the superintendent created that first unit. We had crime down over 33% in my area before he created that unit. And once that unit was created, crime went rampant, not only in my community, but the entire city. And so now, it is an admission of failure by the administration that his policy and the new rolling team did not work. And hopefully we can reverse the course, because a lot of people have died. A lot of people have been shot because of that strategy that failed. And so now when you look at here we are trying to sue the gangbangers. I mean, how are you going to sue people who, number one, don't work? How are you going to sue somebody who don't have assets, who, don't have capital? And so this is just another, let's throw everything up against the wall and let's see what sticks. Let's see what gets the headline for today. And there's no way you're going to be able to sue these gangbangers, and this is all political maneuvering at its best.
And as the ACLU has talked about, sometimes it's really hard to pin down 100% whether or not someone is officially in a gang. Alderman Villegas says all of this is going on. City Council is starting to discuss the new ward maps after the census, which showed significant gains in the Latino population. Does that mean you're going to fight for more majority Latino wards and perhaps Latino representatives on City Council?
Well, I think that the data just came in last month. We have our team analyzing it. When you put it into perspective, Latinos are just 40,000 people short of being the majority in the city of Chicago. So I think it's past due that we get our fair share of representation, not just in the wards, but also within city government. And when you take a look at this administration, having just 2 Latino commissioners, it's abysmal. I think the caucus has taken a stance that we want to see parity, because I can tell you right now that diversity and inclusion and equity, all those other nice words, are not working for our community. So we want to see parity. We want to see our fair share. And as it relates to the map, we're going to follow the data, the Voting Rights Act, and we're going to listen to the people of Chicago to kind of determine what it is they want to see as we reapportion the maps for the next decade.
Redrawing those maps is always an interesting process. I want to move to a proposal by the mayor to allow cannabis sales downtown where they are currently prohibited. Alderman Riley, this is something you've wanted for a while, although in this latest plan it would exempt Michigan Avenue, so no pot shops on Michigan Avenue or most of State Street. Does this plan work for you?
It's a compromise. It's not my preference. My preference would be there'd be no exclusion zone at all downtown. But that's the way the democratic process works at City Hall. You need to give up a little to get things done sometimes, and that's the case here. I think the city grossly undercounted the revenue upside that comes with the cannabis industry. Now we're at a point where all new social equity applicants that have just been waiting 2 years to get approved are in a position to go and get locations. By opening up downtown, we're giving those social equity applicants a leg up. It's an industry we need to embrace. I think the city of Chicago, every dollar we're making off cannabis revenue is one less dollar we need to lean on from the property tax bill. Most of my constituents have had it with property taxes. And I think the stigma that goes with cannabis is being lifted. People use this to help treat disease and symptoms of cancer. So I think there's a lot of use for it. We desperately need the revenue. We should embrace this as a tourism economy, a cannabis tourism economy. Other cities have, and they're making windfall profits. We can't afford to leave that money on the table right now when so many people need services and we need more police officers on the beat.
And Alderman Beal, this has been sold as a way to get Black or Latino business owners a leg up to get into the pot industry where they've severely been lacking. Do you think this plan would accomplish that?
Absolutely not. I voted against the original ordinance that came before the city of Chicago, and I said there was nothing in it for people of color. And as of today, there's still no people of color that are in this industry, and they've had almost a 3-year head start. And now we're looking at the social equity piece. And based on the data that I've looked at, almost 50% of these so-called social equity applicants are fronts, and they're fronting for other people. You got people like Ricky Hendon, who obtained a license, and now he's trying to sell the license. So at the end of the day, the people who wrote this ordinance are the same people that are dominating the industry. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the same old, where people of color are not going to be able to penetrate this industry, and it has hurt people of color more so than anybody in the history. The war on drugs offended the communities of color more so than anybody else, and we're not getting our fair share of the pie. And here we are once again trying to put another Band-Aid on a gunshot wound.
Ricky Hendon, of course, a longtime political figure on the west side of Chicago. Alderman Wagasbeck, I want to get to this news about your colleague, Alderman Jim Gardner, who had text messages denigrating your female chief of staff. Also text messages that apparently show a vindictive streak seeking retaliation against constituents that oppose him. What kind of recourse should there be for Alderman Gardner?
Well, first I want to say I support the women who were on the receiving end of those text messages, and it's very inappropriate. It was misogynistic, and while he called me up, I think he still has to apologize and make amends there to the women and the constituents that he made the comments about in those messages. But I think the bigger thing here is, we hear stories about withholding services, and we just can't do that as aldermen. We might have disagreements on policies with our constituents. We might have disagreements about something like zoning and not referring those, but we have to still provide the services. We still have to do the things that every constituent is entitled to, and that is those services. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if the Inspector General takes it on or who does, but we can't go back to old machine ways of treating constituents. So I think it's at this point now where he has to make sure, the alderman does, that he's providing those services and doing right by his constituents.
And of course, the mayor has called for an Inspector General investigation into a lot of these allegations. Alderman Villegas, you and all your colleagues are going to decide whether to take about a $6,000 to $7,000 pay increase. Are you going to take yours?
No, I've already submitted the documentation, and this is like the third or fourth time that I have declined it. Listen, we're coming out of a pandemic. Our communities are struggling. We need every penny possible to deal with programs for our constituents. My community was, the Black and brown communities were devastated by COVID. At one point, the 60639 area code, which I represent a portion of, had almost 1 in 5 people with COVID positive. Because of the fact that my ward has a lot of people that were essential workers. So I think that we need to tighten our belts as well until we get out of this pandemic. So I've already declined that pay raise, and this is the third or fourth time that I've done that.
And I'll pose that question to everyone else on this panel. Who's taking the pay raise? Who's declining it? Don't all answer at once.
I've taken it.
Alderman Riley, Beal?
I haven't made a decision yet.
I'm leaning towards taking it. I actually am the third lowest paid alderman in the council. I think that's only because I missed turning back the raise 1 year. So I think I'm $800 paid more than the lowest, but I'm still trying to figure that out. I've been doing the symbolic tightening of the belt since I was elected. So I'll think that through.
All right. Well, a lot to think through in advance of tomorrow's meeting. A lot of stuff on the agenda, and we do thank Alderpeople Scott Waguespack, Gilbert Villegas, Anthony Beal, and Brendan Riley for joining us. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now to Brandis and the debate over the new federal vaccine mandate for employers. Brandis.
In Paris, President Joe Biden's vaccine and testing mandate is facing some pushback. The mandate, announced last week, requires all companies with 100 or more employees to ensure their workforce is fully vaccinated against COVID-19, and for workers who are not vaccinated to comply with weekly COVID testing. The mandate is intended to push about 2/3 of American workers to get vaccinated, but some are claiming it's government overreach. Joining us to discuss this mandate are Dr. Rachel Rubin, Senior Public Health Medical Officer and co-lead at the Cook County Department of Public Health, and S.T. Karnick, Senior Fellow and Director of Publications at the Heartland Institute. Welcome to Chicago Tonight to both of you. Dr. Rubin, let's start with you, please. Why do you believe it's important for the federal government to mandate the vaccine?
We need to have as many people vaccinated as possible in order to get rid of this pandemic. And throughout the United States, especially our essential workers, are quite vulnerable to getting exposed to COVID. And we need to have vaccine available and provided to all workers throughout the entire country.
Available and provided, of course, but necessary to mandate.
Absolutely. At this point, I think a mandate is absolutely necessary. There has been enough vaccine available to go around for several months now, and we still are nowhere near the threshold that we need to be to have everybody safe. So at this point, we are at the point of needing mandates.
But S.T. Karnick, you are not a fan of the president's mandate. Why not?
Well, it's unconstitutional. It's simply, you can have a lot of problems out there that you'd like to solve, and you'd like to have the federal government do it, but this is not constitutional. Now, the reality is that this is something that's under what's called the police powers, and the police powers are reserved to the states. The federal government desires to do this, and they want to do this, but they can't, and so they shouldn't.
And just to be clear for the folks at home, unconstitutional, you say, related to police powers. Which clause, which part of the Constitution does the mandate violate?
The 10th Amendment. And also remember that the 10th Amendment refers to a concept that is called the enumerated powers, which means that everything that is not explicitly granted to the federal government as a power and is typically granted to Congress, not the president, is an unenumerated power. If it's not an enumerated power, the federal government can't do it. And in any case, the president can't do these things, even if he has Congress's permission, because it's not constitutional. But even if the Congress does it and it's not an enumerated power, they don't have the right to do it. So there are two places where this falls short. It falls short at Congress, it falls short at the president. This is not something that the federal government has any right to do.
And Dr. Rubin, your department reports that there's currently a high community transmission level with a 7-day rolling average of 408 new cases as of Saturday. And that's in the graphic we're looking at, that's suburban Cook County, Illinois. How is the mandate expected to effectively fight against the rising COVID cases?
I think the mandate now gives, especially employers, the right to say to their workers, you need to be vaccinated or you don't work here. We're going to make the vaccine available to you. We want to have you safe. We want to have our customers safe. And I think that this mandate is the way to go at this point. We need to be protecting the public's health. It's not a matter of individual rights. It's a matter of protecting everybody's health. And that's the mandate of public health. That's what we're supposed to be doing. It means that when I get vaccinated, I'm not just protecting myself, I'm protecting my family, I'm protecting my community, I'm protecting my country.
St. Karnick, part of the mandate states that if you're not vaccinated, then you have to submit to weekly testing before you can turn to work. Is that not a fair alternative?
It is a fair alternative, but the reality is that this is a matter of individual rights. We can have all kinds of things that we want from government, that we want government to do. But there's a reason that they can't do everything they want to do. And that's we have individual rights. And in a case like this, there's the option of the states, not just the individual, but the states. The states could do this if they wanted to. Few have. So there's a reason for that. President Biden wants to do this very badly, but that's the only way to do it. It's unconstitutional. And this is something that President Biden has a habit of doing. He seems to feel like he hasn't had a good day if he hasn't done 6 unconstitutional things before breakfast.
Okay, I'm sure there's a lot that we can get into there. But just yesterday, Governor Ricketts of Nebraska spoke with Fox News anchor Chris Wallace on how children have to be vaccinated against a number of diseases in order to attend school. Here's a look.
Why are those mandates that parents in your state must comply with and do comply with routinely, why is it that they're not so objectionable and such a violation of personal freedom, but Biden's vaccine mandates are?
Well, for all those that you just listed, there's a long history that parents have had the opportunity to see how those things have been implemented. And there's still a lot of people out there who don't know what to trust. And in fact, this is really an outcome of what the CDC has done, because they flip-flop on so many issues, whether it's masks or whether you have to mask after you've been vaccinated and so forth. There's just a lot of people out there who don't know who to trust right now.
So, ST, a similar question to you. The Illinois Department of Public Health holds these same vaccine requirements for children in school. Is the COVID mandate much different?
It is, because it's coming from the federal government. That's the big difference. We can't have this kind of interfering in such intimate individual choices from the federal government. If the states want to do it, they have the authority to do it. I'm not sure it's even right on the state level, but the reality is that if one state does it and another state doesn't do it, then at least people have some choice in the matter. They can choose where to live. But when the federal government does it, it's simply not right. It's not constitutional. They don't have the authority to do it.
Doctor, what do you say? What is your response to people who think that the mandate is the government overreaching?
I don't think that it is the government overreaching. I'm not a lawyer. I can't comment on a constitutionality issue. But all I know is that it's also the obligation of our government to keep us safe and to keep us healthy. And without these mandates, whether it's on a federal level or on a local level or state level, and the state of Illinois has these mandates in place, or at least an order in place related to this, is that we know that without these mandates, people are going to die. People are going to die. And I think that it is our absolute responsibility within public health to have these kind of mandates in place when people are not abiding by the guidance that has put in place, which is not mandated. Okay. At this point, we have reached the point where we have to have mandates. Otherwise, people will not do the right thing.
And that is where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to Dr. Rachel Rubin and St. Karnick for joining us. Up next, a local effort to conserve thousands of monarch butterflies. Stay with us. Is there anything that these police departments can do to earn trust from the community at this point? What inspired you to propose this bill?
We need some legislation. We've got to turn the page on this history.
What are the ways in which we can hold institutions accountable while also providing an opportunity for community to show up and not only just demand, but ask that we build these bridges together, because I think that that's the only way that we're truly going to get free.
There's much more ahead on the program, including the kickoff for Cook County's Racial Equity Week. But first, every year, millions of monarch butterflies from across the U.S. migrate to Mexico for the winter. Chicago Tonight's Joanna Hernandez visited an organization in Little Village that has raised thousands of monarchs for their annual butterfly release. Here's a look.
What's the milkweed used for? For butterflies, so they can lay their eggs in there.
30-year-old Belen Chavez can tell you everything you need to know about the life cycle of monarch butterflies.
They lay 100 eggs in 1 week. When you see the eggs, you're supposed to grab them because spiders, birds, they eat them, the eggs or the caterpillars. Yeah, they put them on here, on the bottom, or in the seeds.
Chavez has been attending El Valor for the last 7 years, a nonprofit organization that offers dozens of programs and resources for adults and kids with disabilities. Belen's father tells us her daughter's journey hasn't been easy, as she suffers from bad seizures and memory loss.
Ya no tan frecuente, pero sí le sigue yendo. Tuvo una cirugía en el cerebro y gracias a eso se le cortaron mucho las convulsiones.
Getting ready to fly? Yeah. You want to take it out?
Eugenio Chavez says programs like the butterfly release have helped his daughter grow and find a passion for nurturing animals.
Getting ready? Yeah.
Mucho, inclusive ahorita tiene como unas 15 capullos en la casa, que para la semana que entra ya son mariposas y las suelta.
El Valor has been partnering with the U.S. Forest Service to conserve monarch butterflies for 15 years.
It does so many things. First, it's obviously educational and STEAM-based. But secondly, it represents migration, and so many members of our community, especially during these challenging years that we've had, are from different places, and bringing them all together and representing this freedom and migration and the importance of that just speaks to the heart and soul of El Valor.
From the youngest participants to adults, everyone learns how to take care of this delicate and beautiful species.
Children raise them, find the eggs out in the environment, so they're getting to explore nature, which is hard in the city, and especially in these times, to get outside and really just be free and enjoy it.
Friends Vincent and Ivan are two of thousands of participants who've been taking care of 150 monarchs this year. They get a close look as caterpillars grow into butterflies and burst out of their cocoons to travel south for the winter.
We give them food, we let them go out to fly to Mexico.
The monarch butterflies journey is a long one, but they're expected to reach Michoacan, Mexico in November.
Did you try to name some butterflies?
Yeah, I do.
What did you name it?
Ruby, yeah.
Once the wings are strong enough, the students have to say goodbye to their monarchs and hope they come back to Chicago next year.
Oh, the wings they're starting to open and close.
Belen Chavez is now teaching others the importance of taking care of these fragile butterflies.
It's right there. Is it right in my hair? Is it silly? Oh, it's funny. Yes.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Joanna Hernandez.
The monarch butterflies are expected to arrive in Mexico in November, right in time for Day of the Dead. And now, Paris, we toss it back to you.
I thought that butterfly was an earring, but it was an actual butterfly in Joanna's ear. Nice story. All right, Brandis, thanks very much. And still to come on Chicago Tonight, the Attorney General is working alongside retailers to stop organized theft. That and more business news from Cranes. Cook County President Tony Preckwinkle and county commissioners kick off Racial Equity Week. We hear more about its goals. And a look at the creator economy, which has reportedly amassed more than $1 billion in funding this year alone. But first, some more of today's top stories. A group of Northwest Side residents are calling on their alderman to resign. A group billing itself as United Northwest Side held a rally within the past hour outside the office of 45th Ward Alderman James Gardner. They say they are demanding Gardner's resignation. This after multiple reports from WTTW and other outlets about allegations that Gardner has retaliated against critics and text messages showing misogynistic language toward constituents and colleagues. Gardner has not responded to repeated requests for comment. A Northwest Side woman who had been known to share anti-vaccine and QAnon conspiracy theories has reportedly died of complications due to COVID-19. Veronica Wolski died after being in intensive care at Amita Resurrection Medical Center in Norwood Park and had been known to put anti-vaccine and QAnon signs over an expressway bridge. The hospital was reportedly bombarded with calls, messages, and threats demanding that the hospital give her ivermectin, which is an unproven treatment popular in far-right conspiracy circles. The Cook County Medical Examiner reports that Wolski died just after midnight this morning. A group of Chicago Public Schools parents are calling on the district to step up COVID mitigation measures in schools and allow for a remote learning option for unvaccinated students.
We're demanding a remote option to keep our children safe. And on top of that, we're asking where are the mitigations to keep the kids who decided to go back in person, to keep them safe? Why are we rolling those back?
Parents from a group called CPS Sick Out have been keeping their kids home for the first 10 days of the school year because they don't believe the district has done enough to protect children from the virus. They cite pictures from a number of schools where students haven't been socially distanced in classrooms or in hallways, and they're also calling on the district to bring back the daily health screener to prevent sick children from coming into buildings. Chicago's second largest bank by deposits is closing multiple branches by the end of the year. Attorney General Kwame Raoul is teaming up with retailers to crack down on organized theft, and an auto convention is canceling their Chicago event due to rising COVID cases. Here to go behind the headlines is Crane's Chicago business editor Ann Dwyer. Ann, great to see you as always. So let's start with the bank closures. BMO Harris, one of Chicago's biggest bank. Why is it closing so many branches?
Well, fewer customers want to bank in person in the COVID era, Paris, and BMO has actually been relatively slow to make this move. Chase and Bank of America have been trimming their branch networks, and now BMO is following suit with an announcement that they're cutting 5% of their 128 branches here in the 6-county area. It is a move that's driven by COVID, but it's only fair to note that actually a lot of banks had been rethinking their networks of branches prior to COVID because, you know, digital banking is just much cheaper to run, and more customers are getting accustomed to doing their banking by phone and over their computers.
Many more banks not wanting to pay those leasing costs. All right, next up, Ann, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul is launching a coordinated theft task force. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think that the AG is acknowledging here that a lot of the attacks that we're seeing in places like the Magnificent Mile, auto dealerships, pharmacies, etc., are not isolated incidents. And in fact, the folks that are committing some of these crimes are often doing it in more than one jurisdiction. So with the belief that these are coordinated attacks, Raoul and his counterparts in other law enforcement agencies seem to be saying that it's time for them to get coordinated too. So they'll be sharing tips. They will be cooperating on prosecutions, and they'll be working with retailers and retail associations to try to come up with a more forceful response to what seems to be a growing problem.
Now, a lot of retailers have talked about their concerns around this. All right, finally, Ann, we thought the trade show and convention business was picking up, but Chicago loses another one. Tell us which one.
This one is the National Auto Auctions show. It's not, by Chicago standards, a huge show, but its cancellation announced today is a warning sign that perhaps we may be slipping back into the deep freeze that we were in just about a year ago when COVID seemed to shut down the entire convention and trade show business here in town, which of course is a huge pillar of Chicago's hospitality economy. Now, what's going to happen next is anyone's guess. I think a lot of trade show operators, though, are going to be looking at this and rethinking their plans for in-person events. If the Delta variant doesn't get into check soon, I think a lot more organizations are going to be ratcheting back.
All right. Well, we'll have to keep watching that. And Ann, thank you so much, as always.
Thank you.
And now, Brandis, we toss it back to you.
Paris, thank you. 3 words are being used to sum up this year's Cook County Racial Equity Week. Imagine, intersect, act. It's the 3rd year of the push for advancing racial equity at the county level, created before but made more relevant in the wake of the racial reckoning after George Floyd's murder. Take a look at today's kickoff.
We've committed to strategies and measurable outcomes that hold us accountable to the public. It's not enough just to talk about equity, we must act.
And here to talk about Racial Equity Week are Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle and Denise Barretto, the county's Director of Equity and Inclusion. Welcome back to Chicago tonight, both of you. So, Madam President, let's start with you, please. Let's talk about some of the progress that you've made since you started the program. Would you say that the outcomes have been the same or worse after, last year billions of dollars were pledged on racial equity?
Well, why don't we begin at the beginning? Our county work around racial equity began with my tenure. I mean, one of the things I focused on immediately was criminal justice reform, because I know that the criminal justice system disproportionately impacts black and brown people. And we also focused, of course, on delivering health care, because there's a great need in communities of color for access to quality health care. So equity was a motivating force from the very beginning. But in the fall of 2018, after 18 months of work, we put together a policy roadmap. My chief of staff, Lynetta Haynes-Turner, worked very hard with our staff and our advocates and community residents to try to figure out what direction we should be going for the next 5 years. And we put together a policy roadmap, and what we came up with was we really had to work to address racial inequity in our county. That this was a real challenge that government was in a unique position to try to address, and we ought to do everything we could with the resources available to us to address racial equity.
And of course, you said that you are committed to measurable outcomes and accountability. How do you measure accountability? What are the measurable outcomes that you have seen that you'd like to see?
Well, first of all, I mean, one of the things we did was we said racial equity is a concern all across our operations, but we really needed to have a person on staff to focus our efforts and to kind of lead our equity and inclusion activities. And so we hired Denise Barretto, who's with us tonight, to take on that work, to take on that challenge, and to be the kind of locus for our activity in this direction. So I'd like to have Denise say a few words about the challenges that she sees and what brought her to the county.
Yeah, thank you, President Preckwinkle. Yes, essentially, I'm the final human cog in a machine that has been working for equity the entire time. And really, I see myself as more of a facilitator and a coach and an advocate to shepherd it along, because while I have the title, every person that has work in the county has a duty to equity and to look at their job in an equitable way. And some of the challenges I think that I've been faced with was really just getting my arms around all the things that we are currently doing. Because I think one of the things that happens in this equity work is people want to create new things, and it's like shiny this or shiny that, and we don't always talk and beat the drum on the things that we are doing. For example, this administration, equity has been there from the beginning, and it was a core principle of the strategic plan and the roadmap. And so part of what we're doing is connecting the dots for even ourselves internally, but also connecting the public to that. And one example of that would be like our language access policy. We've always translated things in different languages, and we've always been concerned with making sure that people had an accessible opportunity to our information. Well, a language access policy that we just launched back in May was a way to bring that to life and socialize it, as well as codify it, so that it's not something that just happens while President Preckwinkle is in office, but into perpetuity, right? It is now a policy.
And Denise, you know, obviously your position is relatively new at the county level, but obviously the problem of racial inequity, it is not new. Do you see it as hard to turn the ship around or to right the ship?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, the county is 191 years old, and having somebody in place for 1 year is not going to turn it around that quickly. But again, I'm building on the momentum that was already here. And I think with everything that's gone on in our country, it's raised awareness in a way that, you know, made it very attractive for me to come. You know, part of what President Preckwinkle asked is, you know, what brought me here? It brought me here because as much as it's tough in dealing with COVID and the response to that, it's an opportunity that's making everyone, we all had to pause and we all had to stop and we all had to acknowledge, right? In my lifetime, I'm almost 50, and I've never ever seen as much people talking about what's happening and talking about it in a real and truthful way, which is something we've always been doing. And now we get to build on that and build and bring community partners along with us.
So let's talk about the diversity in Cook County. How diverse is Cook County? Commissioner Donna Miller broke it down at today's press conference. Take a look.
The census data shows that the makeup is 42% white, 24% black, 25% Hispanic or Latino, 8% Asian, and 2% other. So when we think about that, what is Cook County but diverse?
And so, Denise Barreto, back to you. Of course, you named the language access policy, but what does that diversity for Cook County mean in the day-to-day with such a growing Latinx community? For example, more contracts, or what does it mean?
Absolutely. It comes to play in a couple of ways. One, exactly as part of our contract compliance, we're among the most transparent in the way that we report that data. Other people report it, but when we report it, we break it down in a way that shows, you know what, we're having a tide that goes up, but we want you to know that, you know, business with Black-owned women, you know, Black-owned women-owned businesses is up 95% versus other things. And yeah, it was a small number, but the point is the fact that we are talking about it and we're looking at the data in a disaggregated way, that gives us a chance to pull different levers and figure out what are the ways to bring more people into that opportunity. The cultural competence part, I think everyone often thinks about racial equity as just a race thing, right? It's Black, Brown, Latinx, but you know, racial equity actually is a lens that covers all the areas of marginalization. And so while it's not enough to just talk about things from a racial point of view, we got to think about abilities and disabled folks and folks at the various gender expressions and gender and sexual identities. When you think about it in that way, that's what we're
And before we run out of time, Madam President, I want to bring it back to you. You announced that an $80,000 grant was given to Instituto del Progreso Latino. Will more grants like that be given with some of the $1 billion in federal COVID-19 relief funds that the county's received?
Sure, but those resources were our own this summer. We added to the support that had been given, for example, to North Lawndale Employment Network. I was at a press conference there earlier in the summer, as well as Instituto del Progreso Latino. And that was for an alternative high school for young people at risk who've been involved in the criminal justice system. So we've tried to support the efforts to not only build communities, but address the violence that has plagued so many of our neighborhoods with additional resources this summer on top of our usual allocations.
Okay, a lot to talk about here. We could talk about this a lot longer, but we're out of time. My thanks to Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle and Denise Barreto for joining us.
Thank you, Brandis.
Thank you so much.
Up next, what is the creator economy? But first, a look at the weather. If
you've never heard of the, quote, creator economy, there's a good chance you've been influenced by it. The creator economy represents the growing industries behind social media influencers, or anyone who creates and monetizes content online, from fashion bloggers to live streaming gamers and everyone in between. About 50 million people worldwide consider themselves creators, and the industry is estimated to generate billions of dollars annually. And joining us now with more are Lori Buckle, CEO and founder of Cook It Media, an influencer marketing agency specializing in food and lifestyle content creation, and Matt Kirschner, the executive vice president and partner of celebrity relations at Talent Resources. That's a marketing agency specializing in creator and influencer-based campaigns. Welcome both of you to Chicago Tonight.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so Lori Buckle, I'll start with you. We kind of gave the definition. What exactly is a creator in this context, and what is the creator economy?
Oh my goodness. A creator is an amazing, talented person who basically lives in the social space and creates content for her audience effectively. It's a rising industry. It's new, the way we look at it. It's changing all the time, but it is really changing the way we think about advertising and marketing.
And you both work in advertising and marketing. So Matt Kirschner, can you talk about the spectrum of quote-unquote creators that you work with and what kinds of fields that they're influencers in?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, to go off of Lori's previous point, at this time, almost anybody could be an influencer. And so we're working with everybody from your smaller based influencers, your quote unquote nano influencers, all the way up to your Academy Award winners and your more traditional celebrities. So there are these different verticals from blogger, influencer, content specialist, so a photographer, a videographer, as Lori knows, chefs and culinary specialists. So really, we work with pretty much everybody because as brokers, we have access to just about everyone under the sun. And it's really just a matter of who fits for the right demographic, for the right opportunity with our brands and with the campaigns that they're trying to produce and implement.
And Lori, so as Matt mentioned, you work with a lot of chefs with Cook It Media, a lot of folks that are either streaming YouTube or Instagram or other social media things related to cooking. And recent surveys cited that more than 50 million people worldwide classify themselves as creators, although the vast majority of them consider themselves amateurs. So what does it take to be a professional, and how much money can someone make doing this?
Oh, these are such good questions. So an influencer is really a person who, especially on the business side, the influencer marketing side that we do, she's an individual. Most often she is a she. There's definitely some great guys out there too. But she's really decided that this is her business, and she is a content creator. And she creates content for her audience. And when her audience aligns with a brand's target consumer, that's an opportunity for a partnership. And really what we do is that we find that path for a brand through this kind of maze of influencer marketing and all the ways that they can benefit from a partnership with an influencer. I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, but it is a really interesting business. Like Matt said, I mean, these people range in size from 1,000 followers to over 1 million followers. And obviously what they can earn in the process obviously comes along with that.
So Matt Kirschner, in the marketing field, you know, companies for their ads, they want to hire celebrities from Hollywood, or they want to hire athletes. Are these social media influencers sort of the new celebrities and athletes? I mean, are they as lucrative or as in demand as athletes or celebrities have been?
Oh, absolutely. And they've been that way for a while. I think to a certain extent, these new celebrities, these new influencers are bigger than some of your traditional celebrities and actors and musicians and athletes to your point. These people have developed a cult following of millions upon millions of engaged followers, people that want to see what they're doing on a daily basis. They haven't supplanted or taken over necessarily, but you look at films, just look at He's All That, the remake of She's All That. It's been built up from content creators like an Addison Rae. So someone with her following and her ability to engage people gave the studio the confidence to greenlight an entire film just based around that. You're seeing a whole different world of marketing and a whole different world of sort of understanding who can hit a different demographic and target.
All right, so Lori, as you and Matt represent a lot of these influencers, at least in the political space, you you can have a problem here with misinformation, folks that propagate things like the QAnon conspiracy theory on YouTube and all that. So Lori, how do you ensure that folks become famous and get a lot of followers, but aren't just spewing a bunch of nonsense and are legit?
That's really an excellent question. We spend a lot of time doing that. We have a couple of different networks that we work with. We are constantly in the process of vetting individuals, making sure that they are who they say they are, that they haven't purchased any followers, that they really are in this for the authenticity of what they do. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of technology in the background that enables us to see a lot of things within an influencer's platform. So it's just one of those things that we're always watching out for, because, you know, from my perspective, if you're a brand, you're coming to a pretty foreign world over here, and you need to feel very confident about your results and about sort of all of those things that, you know, I think people, you're right, people have been worried about that, and we really work hard to ensure that that doesn't happen.
All right, Matt, we only have a few seconds here, but is there a special sauce here for a successful creator? Just some special thing that they have that they garner 1 million followers? I bet everyone wants to know that formula.
I wish I could give it to you. Unfortunately, there's really no one size fits all. The secret to virality is being in the right place at the right time. These people are studying the algorithms of every single platform. They're looking at the different content that's making a dent in the viewership, and they're really becoming experts in each different platform to measure the algorithms and seeing what can pop off at any different time.
All right. Well, interesting industry, interesting subject. That's all the time we have for this right now. Lori Buckle and Matt Kirshner, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Monday night.
Please join us tomorrow night live at 7. We'll dig into new health insurance coverage data from the U.S. Census Bureau.
Plus, neon and light and contemporary artwork. We tour a new pop-up museum that is electrified. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm dedicated to preserving the dignity and rights of all individuals.